welcome to my channel. So today I read an Argentina folktale. So the title is The Legend of Iguazu Falls. So let's get started. Part 1. The river that slept beneath the moon. Long ago, in the deep green lands near Iguazu Falls, there was a river so wide and so calm that people believed it carried dreams inside its water. In the early morning, pale mist floated above the river like soft white cloth. The trees stood tall and quiet beside the water. Small birds with bright feathers moved between the branches, singing gentle songs before the sun fully rose into the sky. The people of the forest lived close to nature. They listened carefully to the wind. They watched the clouds. They thanked the rain. And above all, they respected the river. The river gave them fish. It gave them water. It carried cool air through the forest during the hot season. But the people also feared it, because beneath the peaceful surface, they believed an ancient spirit slept. His name was Momo. The elders said Momo was older than memory itself, older than the villages, older than the oldest trees. Some said he was born when the world was still dark and silent. Others believed he came from the moon and fell into the river long ago. Nobody knew the truth, but every child learned his name in whispers. At night, when the fires burned low, grandparents told stories about him. Momo watches the river, they said softly. He listened. If he becomes angry, the water will rise. The children always moved closer to the fire when they heard those stories. Outside the homes, the insects sang loudly in the darkness. The river continued moving quietly beyond the trees. And sometimes, when the moonlight touches the water in a certain way, people imagined they could see something enormous moving beneath the surface. Whether it was true or not, nobody wished to discover the answer. The village nearest the river was small. Simple wooden homes stood between tall trees and narrow dirt paths. Smoke rose gently into the sky each evening as families cooked together over warm fires. Life there moved slowly. In the mornings, woman carried baskets filled with fruit and roots gathered from the forest. Children laughed while chasing each other through the grass. Hunters returned quietly with fish or wild animals from deeper parts of the jungle. And every evening, the sound of drums sometimes floated softly through the trees as the people gathered together beneath the stars. Among the villagers lived a young woman named Naipi. Everyone knew her name. Travelers from distant villages spoke about her beauty after seeing her only once. But those who truly knew Naipi rarely mentioned her appearance first. They spoke about her kindness instead. They spoke about her calm spirit, her gentle smile, her soft voice that never sounded sharp or cruel. Naipi listened carefully when others spoke. Even children felt comfortable beside her. Old women often asked her to help prepare food or weave clothes because her hands were patient and careful. Animals trusted her too. Birds sometimes landed near her feet while she walked outside. Stray dogs followed her through the village. Even nervous horses became calm when she touched them gently. Her mother once laughed and said, "Perhaps the forest itself loves you." Naipi smiled shyly at those words. But inside her heart, she sometimes felt lonely in a way she could not explain. Many young men admired her. Several families hoped she would marry into their homes one day. But Naipi never seemed excited by such conversations. Instead, she often walked alone beside the river in the quiet hours before sunset. The river made her feel peaceful. She liked the sound of water brushing softly against stones. She liked the cool air rising from the surface. Sometimes she sat for hours beneath the trees, simply watching the light move across the water. One evening, her younger cousin found her sitting near the shore. "You are here again," the little girl said happily. Naipi smiled. The river is beautiful today. The child sat beside her and looked toward the water carefully. Are you afraid of Momo? Naipi was quiet for a moment. Then she answered honestly, Yes. The little girl moved closer to her. My grandmother says he eats bad people. Naipi gave a small sad smile. I do not think fear is that simple. The child tilted her head, confused. Naipi gently touches the girl's hair. Sometimes people hurt others because they are afraid themselves. The child did not fully understand, but she nodded anyway. A soft wind moved through the trees above them. Far away, thunder rolled quietly across the sky. Rain season would arrive soon. That night, the village gathered near the center fire. The flames danced orange and gold beneath the dark sky. Men and women sat in silence while the oldest elder slowly stood. His face looked tired. Deep lines crossed his skin like cracks in dry earth. When he spoke, his voice was low and serious. The river grows restless. Nobody interrupted him. The storms are coming earlier this year. The fish are becoming fewer. The people exchanged nervous looks. The elder continued. Momo must be honored. A heavy silence filled the air. Everyone already understood what those words meant. Naipi lowered her eyes slowly. Her mother's hand trembled in her lap. The elder closed his eyes briefly before speaking again. The chosen offering this year is Naipi. Some woman quietly began to cry. A child buried his face against his father's shoulder. But nobody protested. Fear was older than courage in that village. Naipi felt cold inside her chest. The firelight flickered softly across her face. She heard the insect singing nearby. She smelled smoke rising into the night air. Everything around her felt strangely distant, as if she were already becoming a ghost. Her father finally stood and bowed bowed his head towards the elders. "We obey," he whispered painfully. Naipi wanted to comfort him. Instead, she simply sat still. That night, the village became unusually quiet. No drums played. No laughter rose into the air. Even the dogs seemed listless. Inside her small home, Naipi sat beside the window and watched moonlight spread across the forest. Her mother folded clothes silently nearby. In a long time, her mother finally spoke. "When you were little, you used to sleep holding my hand." Naipi looked toward her. "You were afraid of storms." A tear rolled slowly down her mother's cheek. "And now I cannot protect you from one." Naipi moved beside her and held her gently. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Outside, rain began falling softly through the trees. The sound was peaceful, almost sleepy. Later that night, unable to rest, Naipi stepped outside alone. The village fires had nearly disappeared. Only faint orange light still glowed between the homes. She walked slowly towards the river path. Wet leaves shined beneath the moonlight. The air smelled fresh after rain. Somewhere nearby, frogs sang together in the darkness. When Naipi reached the river bank, she stopped quietly. The water looked silver beneath the moon. Mist drifted above the surface like wandering spirits. Naipi wrapped her arms around herself and whispered softly towards the river. "Why must people fear you so much?" The water moved gently. No answer came. But the forest suddenly became still. Then a voice spoke behind her. "You should not walk here alone tonight." Naipi turned quickly. A young man stood near the trees. Tall, quiet, strong. It was Taroba, one of the village hunters. Many people admired him because he was brave and skilled, but Taroba rarely enjoyed attention. He preferred the forest to crowded gatherings. He often disappeared for days while hunting near distant rivers and hills. Naipi had spoken with him before, but never for long. Taroba stepped closer slowly. "The elders are searching for you," he said gently. Naipi looked back towards the river. "I only wanted some quiet." Taroba stood beside her and looked across the water. The moonlight reflected softly in his eyes. After a moment, he asked quietly, "Are you frightened?" Naipi laughed softly, though sadness filled the sound. "Yes," Taroba nodded. "I would be too." The honesty of his answer surprised her. Most people in the village spoke about sacrifice with fearful respect. But Taroba sounded different. More human, more real. He sat on a large stone near the shore. For a while, neither of them spoke. The forest around them breathed softly in the night. Wind moved gently through the leaves. Water touched the rocks with slow, repeating sounds. Finally, Taroba said, "When I was a boy, my grandfather told me something strange." Naipi turned toward him. "He says the river spirit was not always cruel." Naipi listened carefully. He believed humans taught the spirit fear through violence. The words stayed between them quietly. Naipi looked down at the water. "Do you believe that?" Taroba sighed softly. "I do not know." He picked up a small stone and rolled it slowly between his fingers. "But I know this." He looked directly at her now. "No god who demands fear can truly understand love." Naipi felt her heart tighten gently inside her chest. The night suddenly felt different. Closer, quieter, more fragile. I do not want to die," she whispered. Taroba looked towards the river again. Then, after a long silence, he answered softly but firmly, "Then let us leave." Naipi stared at him in surprise. The wind moved softly around them. Far away, thunder murmured once more beyond the dark forest. And deep beneath the silent river, ancient eyes slowly opened in the darkness. Part 2. The Canoe Beneath the Stars. For a long time, Naipi could not speak. The river moved quietly beside them. Moonlight trembled softly across the dark water, breaking into silver pieces each time the current touched the stones near the shore. Taroba's words still hung in the cool night air. Let us leave. Nobody had ever spoken to her that way before. Not with pity, not with fear, but with determination. As if another path truly existed. Naipi looked at him carefully. You speak as though escape is simple. Taroba shook his head slowly. It is not simple. Then why say it? Why say it? Because sometimes difficult things are still worth doing. The forest around them remained calm and dark. Insects hummed softly between the trees. Somewhere far away, a night bird called once into the silence. Naipi lowered her eyes. If we run, the elders will hate us. Taroba nodded. Yes. The people will say we brought danger upon the village. Yes. And if Momo is real, her voice faded quietly. Taroba looked towards the river again. If Momo is truly a god, he said softly, then perhaps he should learn that humans are not offerings. Naipi felt a strange warmth inside her chest. Fear still lived there. But something else had appeared beside it. Hope. Small and fragile. Like the first light before sunrise. Taroba stood slowly. There is a canoe hidden farther down the river, he said. I use it during hunting trips. Naipi stared at him. You planned this? Not completely. A faint smile touched his face. But I have spent many nights thinking about what I would do if the elders ever chose someone I cared about. Naipi looked away quickly, her cheeks warming slightly despite the cold night air. Taroba noticed but said nothing. Instead, he listened to the forest. The wind had become stronger. Leaves rustled softly above them. Rain clouds slowly covered the moon. We should leave before the dawn, he said quietly. Naipi's heart began beating faster. Leave. The The word itself felt dangerous. Everything she had ever known existed here. Her family, her home, the narrow forest paths she had walked since childhood. The sounds of evening fires, the smell of rain on warm earth. Could she truly abandon all of it? Tarva seemed to understand her silence. You may still choose to stay, he said gently. Naipi looked towards the village behind them. Faint orange lights glowed between the trees where the last fires still burned. Her mother was there, her father too. Perhaps they were awake right now. Perhaps they were crying quietly together. The thought hurt deeply. But another thought hurt even more. The thought of walking willingly toward death simply because others were afraid. Naipi closed her eyes briefly. Then she whispered, "If we leave, where will we go?" Tarva answered softly, "Far beyond the river. Have you been there?" "A few times." "What is it like?" Tarva smiled faintly. There are hills covered in flowers during spring, and forests where the trees grow so tall that sunlight barely touches the ground. Naipi listened carefully. There are villagers too, he continued. Some do not worship the river spirit. She opened her eyes slowly. You truly believe another life exists? I do. The rain began again then. Soft at first. Tiny drops touched the leaves above them. Soon the sound spread through the forest like whispering voices. Tarva held out his hand toward her. We must decide now. Naipi stared at his hand. Strong hand. Hunter's hand. But gentle. Careful. After a long moment, she placed her hand in his. The rain grew heavier. Together they walked quietly through the dark forest. The village slept around them. Only a few dogs lifted their heads as they passed. One old woman sitting beside a dying fire watched them silently from the shadows. Her tired eyes followed them carefully. For a moment, Naipi feared she might call for the elders. But the woman simply looked towards the sky and closed her eyes again. As if she understood. As if she had once dreamed of escaping too. The path towards the hidden canoe was narrow and wet from rain. Tree branches brushed softly against their shoulders. The air smelled rich and green. Tarva walked ahead carefully, carrying a small bag filled with food, water, and blankets. Naipi followed closely behind him. Sometimes lightning flashed faintly beyond the distant clouds, briefly turning the forest silver before darkness returned again. Finally, after a long walk, they reached a quiet part of the river, hidden between enormous rocks and hanging pines. A small wooden canoe rested beside the shore. Rainwater shimmered across its surface. Tarva stepped into the shallow water and pulled it closer. Naipi hesitated. The river suddenly looked much larger here. Darker too. Mist floated low above the surface. The current moved silently into the distance like an endless black road. Tarva noticed her fear. "We do not need to cross the falls," he said gently. "We will follow the calmer water south." Naipi nodded slowly, but an uneasiness still twisted softly inside her chest. The river felt awake tonight, watching them, listening. Tarva helped her into the canoe carefully. The wood rocked gently beneath her weight. Cold air drifted across the water. Then he stepped in beside her and pushed away from shore. The canoe glided silently into the darkness. For a while, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were rain, insects, and the quiet movement of water beneath the canoe. Naipi pulled the blanket around her shoulders and looked back. The forest slowly disappeared behind mist and darkness. Their village was gone now, hidden completely. A strange sadness filled her chest. Tarva noticed her expression. "You miss them already?" Naipi nodded quietly. "Yes." He rested his paddle across the canoe for a moment. "My mother cried when I first left for hunting alone," he said softly. Naipi listened. "She says the forest takes peace of people away each time they travel too far." Naipi looked toward him. Was she right? Tarova smiled faintly. Perhaps. The canoe continued drifting through the rain. Sometimes fish jumped briefly beside them, creating soft circles across the water. Large trees ran over the riverbank like silent guardians. Their branches moved gently in the wind above the canoe. Naipi slowly relaxed. The sound of rain became peaceful, almost sleepy. After some time, Tarova spoke again. When I was younger, I thought bravery meant fighting. Naipi looked at him curiously. But now, he continued quietly. I think bravery is choosing kindness even when fear tells you not to. The words settled warmly inside her heart. You speak strangely for a hunter, she teased softly. Tarova laughed under his breath. My grandfather says the same thing. Naipi smiled for the first time that night. A real smile. Small, gentle, but real. The river widened as they traveled further from the village. Mist thickened around them. The moon disappeared completely behind heavy clouds. Only faint silver light remained upon the water. Naipi looked down into the river beside the canoe. For a moment, she thought she saw movement deep below. Something enormous. A shadow gliding silently beneath them. Her breath caught. Tarova. He immediately became alert. What is it? She stared into the water. But the shadow was gone. Only darkness remained beneath the surface. Nothing, she whispered uncertainly. Tarova watches the river carefully anyway. The river suddenly became colder. Rain fell harder now. The canoe rocked more strongly against the current. Far away, a deep sound rolled through the night. Not thunder. Something lower. Something alive. Naipi gripped the edge of the canoe tightly. Tarova's face became tense. Again the sound came. A long, deep roar beneath the earth itself. The river began moving faster. Mist swirled widely around them. And somewhere ahead in the darkness, hidden beyond the endless rain, something ancient slowly rose from the depths of the water. Part 3. The anger beneath the water. The river changed. Naipi felt it before she fully understood it. The calm movement beneath the canoe disappeared, replaced by a strange trembling current that pulled softly at the wood from below. Rain poured from the sky in silver lines. Wind rushed through the trees along the river banks. The peaceful sounds of insects and birds had vanished completely. Even the forest seemed afraid. Talbot tightened his grip on the paddle. "We must move faster." His voice remained calm, but Naipi could hear the tension hidden beneath it. The canoe cut through the dark water while mist twisted around them like pale spirits. Again that deep roar echoed through the night. Closer now, much closer. Naipi looked behind them. At first, she saw only darkness and rain. Then lightning flashed across the sky. For one brief moment, the river turned white beneath the light. And something enormous moved beneath the surface. A shape longer than any tree. Black scales, golden eyes. Naipi froze. The lightning disappeared. Darkness swallowed the river once again. But the image remained inside her mind. "Muboy," she whispered weakly. Talbot did not answer immediately. His jaw tightened slightly. Then he said quietly, "Keep low inside the canoe." The river suddenly surged forward. The canoe rocked violently. Naipi nearly cried out as icy water splashed across her hands and face. Talbot pushed hard against the current with the paddle. Rain soaked his hair and clothes completely. Another roar rose from beneath the water. This time, the sound carried anger inside it. Ancient anger. The surface of the river burst upward several meters away. A massive dark body twisted through the water before disappearing again beneath the waves. Naipi covered her mouth in shock. The stories were true. Muboy was real. Far older and far more terrifying than she had ever imagined. Yet beneath her fear, Another feeling slowly appeared. Sadness. The creature's roar did not sound only furious. It sounded lonely too. The canoe rushed onward through the storm. The current grew faster every minute. Tarova looked ahead sharply. His expression suddenly changed. No. Naipe followed his gaze. At first she saw only mist. Then she heard it. A distant thunder that did not come from the sky. A deep, endless crashing sound. Water. Huge amounts of water. Tarova's face turned pale. The falls. Naipe's breath stopped. The current is pulling us there? Yes. He forced the paddle against the water with all his strength. The muscle in his arm trembled. But the river no longer listened. The canoe spun slightly sideways. Mist thickened ahead of them until the world became white and grey. The roaring sound grew louder, endless. Naipe's heart pounded painfully inside her chest. Can we escape? Tarova did not answer. Not because he wished to frighten her, because he did not know. The river moved widely now. Waves slammed against the canoe. Rain and river water mixed together across their skin. The storm above them raged with violent wind and flashing light. Then Momo rose fully from the river behind them. Naipe turned and gasped softly. The great serpent towered above the water, enormous beyond imagination. Dark scales glistened beneath the storm. Long strand of river plants hung from his body like old robes. His golden eyes burned brightly against the darkness. But what frightened Naipe most was not his size. It was the emotion in those eyes. Pain. Deep, endless pain. The serpent's voice rolled through the storm like distant thunder. Naipe. The sound shook the river itself. Naipe trembled. Tarova placed himself slightly in front of her. Momo's glowing eyes moved toward him slowly. You steal what belongs to the river. Tarova lifted his head despite his fear. She belongs to herself. For a moment, The storm itself seemed to pause. Then Muboi roared with terrible fury. The river exploded upward around them. Huge waves crashed against the canoe. Naipe screamed as the boat nearly overturned. Taroba grabbed her arms tightly and pulled her close before she could fall into the dark water. The current dragged them forward faster and faster. The roar of the falls now filled the entire world. Mist swallowed the sky. The air itself shook violently. Muboi moved beside them beneath the water, enormous coils twisting through the current. You humans fear me. The serpent thundered. You feed me death. His voice echoed strangely through the storm. Yet you call me monster. Naipe stared at him through the rain. Something inside her heart suddenly broke open. All her life she had heard only fearful stories. But now she saw something else. Not simply a beast. A spirit trapped inside endless loneliness and rage. Naipe slowly stood despite the rocking canoe. Stop, she cried. Taroba looked at her in shock. Muboi's burning eyes fixed upon her. Rain streamed down Naipe's face as she spoke again. We were afraid. Her voice trembled but continued. The people feared losing the river. They feared storms and hunger and death. Muboi's enormous body moved silently beneath the waves. And so they gave others to me, Naipe whispered sadly. Lightning flashed again. The serpent's eyes reflected gold and white through the rain. I never asked for your sacrifices, Muboi said at last. The words struck Naipe like cold wind. Taroba stared upward silently. All these years, Naipe whispered. The serpent voice softened slightly. Fear changes stories. The canoe spun violently again. The edge of the great falls was near now. Water rushed endlessly ahead into white mist and darkness. Taroba grabbed Naipe's shoulders. We must sit down. But Naipe could barely hear him over the roar. Muboi rose higher above them, his enormous body twisting through storm and river alike. I protected this river once, he said. His voice no longer sounded angry alone. Now it carried sorrow older than time. Humans began throwing fear into the water year after year, generation after generation. Rain poured endlessly around them. The river became filled with pain. Naipie's eyes filled with tears. She understood now. Not completely, but enough. Fear had poisoned both humans and spirit alike. The current seized the canoe completely. Taroba's eyes widened. We cannot stop it anymore. Ahead of them, the river disappeared into endless roaring white mist. The falls, massive, terrible, beautiful. Naipie clung tightly to Taroba as the canoe raced towards the edge. Muboi watched them silently through the storm. Then, for the first time, the ancient serpent's expression changed. Not rage, not hatred, grief. The canoe reaches the edge of the world, and the river pulled them into the sky. Part 4, where the water became eternal. For one endless moment, there was only falling. Naipie felt cold mist against her skin. Wind roared around her. The world disappeared into white water and thunder. She held tightly to Taroba as the canoe broke apart beneath them. The sound of the falls swallowed everything else. Sky, river, fear. Even time itself seemed to vanish. Then suddenly, silence. Not true silence, but a soft silence hidden beneath endless water. Naipie slowly opened her eyes. Mist drifted around her like pale clouds. Cool drops rested across her face. For a moment, she wondered if she had died. The air glowed silver and blue around her. The roar of the waterfalls echoed in the distance, deep and endless, yet strangely peaceful now. Naipie. A familiar voice reached her softly. She turned. Taroba stood nearby beside dark wet stones. Alive. Naipie's breath shook with relief. Without thinking, she ran toward him and held him tightly. Taroba wrapped his arms around her gently. For a long while, neither of them spoke. They simply listened to the water. The storm had passed. Above them, faint morning light slowly spread across the sky. Mist rose endlessly around the enormous cliffs and falling rivers. Naipi stepped back slowly and looked around in wonder. Hundreds of waterfalls surrounded them. Some fell gently like silver curtains. Others crashed powerfully against black rocks far below. Rainbows shimmered through the morning mist wherever sunlight touches the water. The air smelled fresh and clean. Beautiful birds flew between the cliffs, their colorful wings glowing beneath the dawn. Naipi had never seen anything so breathtaking. It feels like another world, she whispered. Taroba nodded quietly. It does. Then a deep voice echoed softly through the mist. This place was born from sorrow. Naipi turned so slowly. Muboi emerged from the flowing water nearby. But he no longer looked terrifying. His enormous body still carried ancient power, but yet his golden eyes had changed. The rage inside them had faded. Now they looked tired, lonely, and strangely gentle. Naipi stepped forward carefully. You saved us. The great serpent lowered his head slightly. The river chose not to take your lives. Mist drifted slowly around him. Water flowed endlessly beside his massive body. Taroba looked at the spirit carefully. Why? For a moment, Muboi did not answer. Then he spoke quietly. Because you were the first human who looked at me without hatred. The waterfalls thundered around them. Sunlight slowly spread wider across the cliffs. Naipi felt tears warming her eyes. All this time, she whispered, people feared you for nothing. Muboi's expression darkened slightly. Fears is never nothing. His voice echoed softly through the mist. It grows. Water rushed endlessly over the cliffs nearby. It changes stories. Naipi lowered her gaze suddenly. The serpent continued. Long ago, humans and river spirits lived beside one another peacefully. As he spoke, The mist around them seemed almost alive, moving softly through the air like memories. The people respected nature, but they did not worship fear. Muboi's golden eyes looked far away now, as if seeing ancient centuries hidden inside the water. But storms came, floods destroyed villages, hunger spread through the forest. His voice became softer, and frightened people searched for something to blame. Naipi listened quietly. They began offering gifts to the river, then animals, then humans. The waterfalls roared endlessly below. At first I refused them. Taroba's eyes widened slightly. But pain leaves marks upon even immortal hearts, Muboi continued. Year and year, fear entered the river. Eventually, humans no longer remembered the truth. Naipi felt sorrow spreading through her chest. Not only for herself, not only for the people, but for Muboi too. An ancient spirit trapped beneath centuries of fear and loneliness. The morning sun rose higher. Golden light touches the mist, creating glowing rainbows above the endless waterfalls. Naipi stepped closer to the edge of the cliff carefully. Far below, white water crashed against black stone like moving clouds. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Muboi looked towards the falls. "Yes." Taroba stood beside Naipi quietly. "What will happen now?" he asked. The great serpent was silent for a long moment. Then he answered softly. "The old story must end." Naipi looked toward him. "And our village?" "They will search for you," Muboi said. "But they will find only the broken canoe and the river." Taroba's expression became thoughtful. "They will believe we died." Muboi slowly lowered his great head. "Yes." Sadness passed through Naipi's heart again. Her parents would mourn. The village would mourn. She wished she could comfort them somehow. As if sensing her thought, Muboi spoke gently. "Sometimes endings are also beginnings." The mist curled softly around the cliffs. "The people will no longer offer sacrifices after this day." Naipi looked at him carefully. How can you know? The ancient serpent's golden eyes reflected the waterfalls. Because the river itself has changed. At that moment, sunlight broke fully across the great falls. The water shined brilliantly beneath the morning sky. The roar no longer sounded frightening. Now it sounded alive, free. Muboi slowly began sinking back into the flowing water. Naipi stepped forward quickly. Wait, the serpent paused. Will we ever see you again? For the first time, something like a faint smile appeared in the ancient spirit's eyes. I am always here. Then his enormous form disappeared beneath the mist and river. Only the waterfalls remained. Endless, beautiful, alive. Naipi and Tarwa stood together silently as morning filled the sky. Birds circled through the rising mist. Warm sunlight touched their faces. And for the first time in many years, the river no longer carried fear. Only water, only memory, only the endless song of falling rivers beneath the open sky. Years later, travelers from distant lands came to see the magnificent waterfalls hidden between the forests of Argentina and Brazil. They stood before the enormous crashing water in wonder. Some say the mist carried voices. Others claimed they saw a great shadow moving peacefully beneath the river at sunrise. And sometimes, when moonlight rested softly upon the falls, and the forest became quiet enough to hear the smallest sounds, the old people still whispered the ancient story. The story of Naipi. The story of Tarwa. And the lonely river spirit who finally remembered kindness. Even today, the waters of Iguazu Falls continue falling endlessly through mist and sunlight. Gentle during some seasons, wild during others, but always beautiful, always singing, as though the river itself still remembers the night when fear finally loosened its grip upon the world. So the story is finished. So thank you for watching. Good night.